Good morning, Revolution. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Scott.
Good morning,
Happy
Joe.
Valentine's Day. How are
Happy
you?
Valentine's Day.
Yes.
And as a post on my Facebook wall reminded me this morning, also the anniversary of Captain Cook being killed by angry native people in Hawaii. So anti-imperialist struggle as well.
Captain Cook. Who was Captain Cook? Remind us.
He was, you're putting me on the spot here. He was an English, one of these guys who called themselves explorers, but were actually, imperialist agents trying to subjugate the indigenous people of, in this case, the Hawaiian Islands.
Well, he had a lot of company in that regard. We're revisiting a number of those issues with regard to the founding of the United States and the American Revolution and colonialism and slavery, with a lot of articles on the 1619 project. We, Norman Markowitz, our esteemed comrade professor at Rutgers University, has just published a new article at cpusa.org. And have you read it? It's quite a.
It's quite good. In fact, I was looking this morning through trying to find some pieces from Henry Winston, one of the great leaders of the party and theorists of Black liberation and class struggle. And I found a paragraph that reminded me of the importance of the 1619 project and kind of our approach to it. Winston he's addressing the idea of sort of Black capitalism and a separate kind of economy for Black Americans. And he writes, Black Americans have a first and equal claim on the total economy of the country, which they helped build with 400 years of slave and near slave labor for billions of jobs, housing, medical care, education, etc. They want the total economy turned around to meet the people's needs instead of operating for the wars and the profits of a handful of corporate monopolists. So talking about the way that Black liberation and the struggle for the basic needs of the working class and the people are the way they dovetail with one another.
Well, now, when you talk about the total economy, is the argumentation there that African Americans have, within the capitalist framework, a right to the total economy as well? Because arguably, that is a position that one could take. What do you think?
I don't think that's what Winston is. I think that's why he points out a first and equal claim, in the sense that the labor of enslaved Africans was one of or maybe the primary motor of the creation of capitalist wealth in the United States, but also first in that sense, but also equal in the sense that it's not a claim to all the fruits of capitalism, but a claim to an economy beyond capitalism that would enable those.
Yes, I see what you're saying, but isn't it also the case that we are fighting and struggling within the framework of capitalism?
Absolutely.
And so long as you're functioning within the capitalist framework, I mean, Black people have as much right to be.
Oh yes. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood what you were asking. Yes, a full claim to equality within capitalism as well, an equal claim to the fruits of capitalist production, capitalist society. Certainly, it's not exclusively projected into some future.
And so therefore, we support the right of the Black businesses to. I mean, so long as you're having business, we have as much right to a piece of the pie as others. It's part of what we call the anti-monopoly demands of the people, African Americans, women, Latinos, and so on. And so small.
As you've pointed out in articles before, the demand for full and unconditional equality now and down the road.
Yes.
Um,
On the other hand, our emphasis is not on business, but on African-American workers. 99% of our people are working class people.
and that's the distinction I think that Henry Winston is drawing.
Yeah.
Whereas some were projecting, or were putting forth the idea of Black capitalism, of investing in and creating Black-owned businesses as a path to the liberation of the African American people more broadly. Winston sees the driving force of that process as a mass unity in the struggle against monopoly capital.
Well, that's a very interesting question because it reminds me of I made a post on Facebook the other day with regard to pointing to a drop in union membership amongst African Americans because we have the highest density of union membership of any people in the country. And there's been a drop largely due to a drop in employment in the public sector.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, the public sector is by far the largest employer of people of color.
And we should specify that it's not just that people have decided to desert the public sector and move on to greener pastures. This is part and parcel of the assault by the extreme right on the public sector, on the democratic and public ownership of.
Yes. And so what happened is that a good friend of mine, actually my goddaughter's son, commented on and he said on my post, and he said, well, Joe, Black people, unions ain't nothing but a plantation anyway. And what we need are Black-owned businesses. We shouldn't worry about other people hiring us. We should hire ourselves. And so I replied to him and I said, well, if that's the case, then I imagine that those workers employed in those businesses will need unions as well. And then someone else commented on the post, and this person said, well, unions are the largest civil rights organizations in the country. And so I read that and I said, that's an interesting formulation. And in fact, the unions do make that argument. But here you have to understand the particulars of the situation because this young man is a skilled worker and he comes from a family of very skillful workers. His dad is a very highly skilled worker, electrician, carpenter, extremely skilled. And they live in not in the deep South, but they live in the Maryland, Virginia area. And I'm sure that he was responding to the problems in the skilled trades in the South, and the discrimination that African Americans face in some of those unions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he's responding to that. And so you have to have a sense of who is saying what and where, and then you just can't make blanket statements. You have to understand the uniqueness of each particular case. So in any event, these are some.
We'll be publishing some excerpts, edited excerpts from Henry Winston's book, Strategy for a Black Agenda, which is currently kind of hard to find. It's out of print.
I remember
as part of our discussion around. Yeah, it's a great book. It's got a lot of. My experience reading it is it's almost like it's reading Lenin in a certain sense, since it's really engaged in a lot of the debates that were going on in the left-wing press and intellectual and political circles at the time. So it's sometimes, for those of us who weren't participating, a little hard to follow, but there's some excellent stuff in there.
I had the opportunity to read that book when I was in high school, and I remember we went to the World Youth Festival in Berlin. I believe it was in 1973. And Winston's book was a big, big hit, particularly in and among people from Southern Africa and the diaspora who were reading Winnie's book and debating a lot of the ideas that were put forward there. So yes, we're looking forward to that. Well, it's been an interesting week in Washington, Scott. Your president has been going after the judiciary, so much so
that even William Barr is now kind of striking
William
back.
Barr, of all people, the flunky in chief. I mean, what's going on? He's protesting. He says, "Boss man, you're making my job harder."
Yeah, I don't need somebody a constant background commentary. So that's again, it illustrates the degree to which the extent of the disarray within the ruling class and even within the right wing. And I mean, we shouldn't get confident. We shouldn't. I mean, the capitalist class is, in all of its sections, very accomplished at dealing with and living with and profiting from disarray. So we can't get comfortable, but we also should not see, anything as static or fixed or inevitable or anything like that.
Now there was the speaking of things that are not static or fixed or inevitable. There was the New Hampshire primary last week, and there were some surprises there. Following up on the Iowa caucuses, Mr. Sanders won by a slim margin, but he won, followed very closely by Mayor Pete. And Mr. Biden has dropped precipitously in the standing. I think he came in fourth place, is it? Your homeboy?
Fourth or fifth, yes.
What happened to your homeboy?
For some reason, people don't seem to like him. I mean, and we, as certainly was the case with Hillary Clinton, we cannot fail to take into account the concerted campaign of the right wing. So I don't think it was accidental in the impeachment process that the constant effort to portray Biden as corrupt, as fostering corruption, as the one who should really be investigated, which was the same as what the Trump campaign said about Hillary. Lock her up, lock her up.
Right. They were going after him and his son, during the impeachment.
And I'm not expressing any opinion as to his guilt or innocence. Whatever. But people's opinions and approaches are, to a degree, shaped by, the propaganda emanating from the White House.
But they haven't found any evidence of wrongdoing. I mean, at least so far, and it's all based
if you look closely at it,
unsubstantiated charges so far, isn't it?
If you look closely enough at any piece of regular above-board capitalist business, it's sleazy as hell, and I imagine that's what we're dealing with. But so I don't know. I don't think Joe Biden is especially corrupt or criminal.
I mean,
what's that?
Trump's middle name is corruption.
Yes,
going back to the New Hampshire primaries, it's significant that a socialist, Democratic socialist, and Mr. Sanders and a gay candidate, and Mayor Pete, were the top two vote getters. Don't you think that says a lot about
in both of the contests that are taken as like the heralds of of what's going to happen in the campaign. I think it's very significant, and it really raises the question of unity kind of in a different way, because a lot of the approaches in the mainstream media around the Sanders campaign have been based on this idea that Bernie has no chance to win, so we have to tell his supporters to get ready to vote for somebody else, right? Will Sanders supporters support another candidate to beat Trump? Bernie supporters have to, be willing to whatever. So now we're seeing at least the possibility kind of a flipping of the tables. Well, all of these people who seem so dedicated to the idea that Bernie can't win, will they be able to vote for him?
But now there's another side to this, which is that if you take the percentages gotten by Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, did I pronounce her name right? Her last name?
I don't know if it's Klobuchar or Klobuchar.
In any event, they represent a larger percentage of the vote that Sanders and Elizabeth Warren got. So is it the case that the so-called centrists are having majority support, and that the left is a minority in terms of the electorate? What does that look like to you?
I don't think that's the case. Although you could certainly, on the basis of those numbers, talk about a surge for the centrists. Although classifying Buttigieg I don't think is quite that easy. But the real question, well, in terms of centrists, I think everything is in flux until Bloomberg actually enters the primaries. Is that going to, how is that going to impact the overall breakdown of votes?
And speaking of the center, Bloomberg drop, he's dropped in already. Scott, what are you talking about? And he's dropped $500 million.
But he hasn't been on a ballot anywhere yet. He's not on the ballot until
he's on the ballot. He will be. He's got big bucks, and he's using them. And Biden's dropped 22% in the African American.
Really, I hadn't know. That's extremely significant.
And what's his name? Bloomberg has risen by 12%.
What?
Yes.
Bloomberg Mayor Stop and Frisk is.
And he did an ad. Bloomberg did an ad with Obama saying nice things to him, about him. And the drop in Biden support and the rise in Bloomberg support happened right around the same time that this ad has been airing. And so Bloomberg is making it appear that he's Obama's man.
Yeah.
Or that Obama is his man, however you want to look at it. And therefore, he's banking on his bankroll to place him at the top of the list.
And it's a real danger. And I find the idea that you can simply skip, the first four primaries and go straight to where all the votes are. I mean, I find it profoundly undemocratic and arrogant. It shows the extent to which the Electoral College and that kind of undemocratic thinking has corrupted our political process, both the money and the disdain for.
But isn't the real question, what is the revolutionary position of the Communist Party with respect to the election? And how are we going to get the word out? And in that regard, the Political Action Commission has drafted a statement on the party's position with respect to the 2020 election that will be on the website soon. So everybody who wants to know where do we stand, you'll be able to find out soon. Right now, I can tell you that we're focusing on the issues, fighting for unity. We're welcoming the in this socialist moment, the candidacies of Sanders, we recognize the progressive candidacies of Warren and the other candidates. I agree with you. It's not so simple to call some of these others moderates, because the positions that they are taking today were left-wing positions 4 years ago, for example, on healthcare. Now all of a sudden they want to categorize them and put them in a box. I like it that they're not giving in to the red baiting of Trump. And that's a really important issue. Well,
And
I think.
so. Just one quick thing on when we talk about focusing on the issues. What are the issues that we see? The big issues on which broad unity can be based in this election.
Well, I think one big issue that people aren't talking about is the military budget. You got to cut that goddamn thing.
Tax the rich.
Huh?
You got to tax the rich.
You got to tax the rich. I think we need universal health care, whether, single payer, Medicare for all. We need affirmative action, with compensatory measures for African Americans, women, Latino, Asians, I think that we need decent housing. We need to abolish the student debt. It's not collectible and it's not payable. So let's just cancel it, and make college free, While we're at it, we got to deal with these issues of gun violence, all across the country. There are mass killings and there are gang killings and all kinds of killings, and we got to address that. Opioid crisis, the health crisis has to be addressed as well.
And how are the candidates talking about immigration? I know that Julian Castro had immigration and the environment, I think, were among his biggest topics. Have they sort of developed ideas around an overhaul of the immigration system, a path to citizenship, things like that?
That's an important issue, and perhaps we should have a show on just that topic. Mr. Yang has dropped out of the race, which is unfortunate because he has been raising the issue of a universal basic income for everybody as an important measure. And so I hope that point is not sidelined.
But we should talk about that at some point, because the way he raised it, part of it involved getting rid of welfare benefits in exchange for the universal basic income. And to my mind, it has to be UBI plus healthcare plus welfare benefits plus, Anyway, we can talk about that later.
Great. Well, thank everybody for showing up. Join us next week. Don't forget to host a watch party. Even if the show is over, you can still host a watch party by clicking on the host a watch party button. Make sure you check out our website at cpusa.org. We got a number of great new articles on the page on Black History Month. There's a new Marxist IQ, and a number of other pieces, including, as I said, Norman Markowitz's new piece on replying to the 1619 Project. Well, have a great week, Scott. Happy Valentine's Day to you and your family. And everybody else, take care. We'll talk.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.